Today we'll be speaking about the virtue of chastity. I remember when I was in university, I had a friend of mine who would say to me, Fidel, I don't understand why Christians have to be so negative around sex and why so many rules. I mean, how could God, if God really loves us, I mean, surely he'd allow us to have a good time, man. And I mean, he understands. I mean, he made women so beautiful. Why would he just like make things so hard? I mean, surely God understands and he'll give us a break. And that's an attitude which is very common amongst very many people to view all of the, let's call them the moral norms around sex and chastity as something very, very negative. And look, if you look at, for instance, the Bible, right, especially the Old Testament, the Ten Commandments, it's very negative. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that, right? And so one could come away thinking, gosh, I mean, what about celebrating love? And the whole hippie slogan of make love, not war. Can't we just all love one another and get along? And I'm not hurting anyone, and it's two consenting adults. What harm does it do? There's that whole way of thinking, of looking at things. And perhaps that way of looking at things is not really a full expression or a realistic or a holistic view of reality. And once we start to try and look at reality in a holistic way, in a complete and full way, we'll start to understand why some of these, let's call them rules, exist around the area of sex and sexuality and chastity. Now, imagine you met a girl, right? You met a girl and you're speaking to her, she's a very nice girl, and then you started to speak to her about who you really are. You start to speak about your hopes, your dreams, your ambitions, your deepest desires, and perhaps even go a step further. You start to speak about your deepest fears, your insecurities, maybe some of the emotional traumas that have haunted you since childhood because of something that happened to you as a kid in school, in the playground, with your parents, with your siblings, or whatever. Basically, you completely open up your heart to her and you tell her everything about yourself, things which you've never ever revealed to any human being on the face of the earth. And then she just looks at you and is like, I don't care. I'm not interested. The only thing I care about is what you can do for me physically to give me pleasure. I don't care about your hopes and your dreams and your ambitions and who you are and desires and emotional traumas, insecurities, fears. Who cares? I don't care. I just want you to give me physical pleasure for now. And once I'm tired of you, I'll move on to the next person. Imagine the level of hurt that you would experience, the pain that you'd experience. You probably add that to your list of emotional traumas that you've experienced in your life. To have someone who treats you and who you really are, your deepest hopes, your deepest fears, your insecurities, your ambitions, with complete indifference. I think a part of your heart would die. I think a part of you would die if you experience that. And that is what very many women experience when we men look at them simply as that, as things. I would actually say things that are there to just give us physical pleasure. Their hopes, their fears, their insecurities, their dreams, their ambitions, their desires, I don't care. Who cares about that stuff? Who cares about what they're really feeling? I don't care. I just care about the physical pleasure that she would give me. Now, that in and of itself is one of the greatest ways in which you can devalue a human being and reduce them from a person to a thing, from a person to an object. And you may think, yeah, it's okay, it's a nice theory. But if you just like trade places and just, I'm sure you've all had that experience where you tell someone something that's really weighing down on you, or something that's, you reveal a little bit of your soul to them and they treat you with indifference. if you've had that experience and can remember the pain and hurt it caused, then I don't think you can just like, just brush this off your shoulder and say, who cares? Who cares? Those are nice theories. I mean, all I care about is my pleasure and what this woman can get for me, can give me. So at the end of the day, we have to always remember that a human being is much, much more than what they can do, and is much, much more than what they look like. A human being is a much more holistic person, a much more holistic entity. And these rules, these moral codes, are in a way what give us or protect our ability to be able to love human beings holistically, looking beyond what they can do for us, which is kind of selfish, and what they look like, which is very, very superficial. So that's why these rules exist. In a way, you could say they give us the true freedom to be able to access what love really is. They give us, it's like someone who doesn't practice these rules is like someone who swims in an ocean, let's call it the ocean of love, and can only snorkel and can only stay really near the, can't even snorkel, doesn't even have that equipment, can only just paddle near the surface and see shapes and vague forms of the fish underneath. But someone who practices chastity, someone who's got the scuba diving equipment and can really go deep and spend time deep in the water and see an entire new world, an entire new universe of deep sea creatures, which from the surface would never have ever been, they'd never be able to see them. Why is this? It's because the idea of love is a very, it's a very, first of all, it's a mystery. Love is a mystery. It's difficult to define it. It's hard to describe it, difficult to speak about it. It's got very many shapes and forms and keeps changing. You could almost say on a daily basis, its manifestations change every day. And so whenever you come across a concept that is this complex and in some ways this simple as love, very hard to understand, almost amorphous, you need a symbol. That's why symbols exist. Symbols help us to understand things which are hard for us to grasp otherwise. So we create a symbol. So for instance, like peace. Okay, what does peace look like? So you come up with a symbol for peace, like the peace sign. You come up with something like that. It's very, and the same thing with justice. Justice, what is, okay, so you come up with the scales of justice to represent justice. Love is very similar. And you could say it's the greatest thing a human being is capable of, is loving someone, is desiring what is best for that other person. I love that definition of love. No pun intended. But if you take a second, and then we'll come back to what we were speaking about, the symbol of symbolism of deep concepts. I love the definition of love, that love is desiring the best for the person loved. Because if we have a woman or a girl, and then you're only interested in her from the point of view of the sexual pleasure that she can give you, you have to take a step back and ask yourself, is that the best thing for her? Is that the best thing for her? Is that wanting the best for her? I'll leave that question there and come back to the idea of symbolism. So we were saying, when you have a really deep, complex idea, you need a symbol to be able to express it. I think sex is a symbol of love, but it is not love itself. It is not love itself. And the way you understand this is that you can have the two things to be being completely separated. So you can have love existing completely without sex, and you can have sex existing completely without love. Now, the best situation is obviously where the two of them are combined, where the love is so deep that it finds a physical, almost symbolic expression through sex. You could say it's the culmination of that. So sex, it's important to remember that sex in and of itself is not love, but merely a symbolic expression or representation, or you could say it's a culmination of very many other small acts of love that have taken place over time, leading up to that moment of sex. And if those things are taken out of context, they're not there, they're not present, then sex in itself becomes completely meaningless, and in many ways is a corruption or a caricature of love. And I think this is why, for instance, you'll find that many of these relationships that exist where people call them, friends with benefits, they don't tend to last, because at some stage, one or the other of the two parties involved will say, will start to feel that this is empty, that they want more, that they realize that the sex itself does not satisfy them. They want real intimacy. They want to be able to have a sense of security with this person, of being able to open up their hearts and their souls to them and fully exchange who they are. Not just exchange bodily fluids, but exchange their deepest fears, their deepest hopes, their dreams, their desires, their insecurities, their emotions, everything. Be able to express them fully, because this is a full expression of love, isn't it? When you feel you have a sense of security, a sense of belonging, and a sense of being accepted for who you are. If the only reason you date a girl or talk to a girl is because she's pretty, you're not fully accepting who she is. Because every woman knows this, that by the age of 70, they won't be able to, they say beauty is a prerogative of youth. You'll never ever see a 70-year-old woman in a bikini advertising the Maldives as a holiday destination, or in a short skirt leaning on a Ferrari advertising it as the next supercar to add to your collection. You'll never see that. Does that mean that that woman is less of a woman? Does that mean that she's less of a person? Does that mean that she's less worthy of being loved just because she's 70 years old and doesn't look like a supermodel who you can then, make a big poster of and put her at the entrance of a clothing store? Does that mean that at all? I'll leave that question. I won't answer it. It's a rhetorical question. But the point is, this virtue, and it's called chastity, enables us, you could say it gives us a superpower to be able to dive deep into the depths of love and to start to experience people fully. You could have a girlfriend right now who, for you, the only thing about her is, oh, she's so gorgeous, she's so beautiful. You are so far from experiencing who she really is, because she has a whole bunch of ideas, of thoughts, of dreams, of emotions, of desires that you are not giving yourself the opportunity to access. And once you do, once you're able to see beyond her physical appearance and see who she is as a person, there's a side of you that is going to get unlocked. It's a key that opens a part of who you are, and you grow and develop. You see, there's a complementarity between men and women, in that a man will not fully experience or understand his masculinity outside of the context of femininity. Put it simply, women help men become more of men. The experience of a woman, whether it is a sister, a wife, a mother, a good friend, whatever, that experience of femininity, when you spend time with women and really get to know them deeply, you start to see the universe, the world, from a completely different side, which you hadn't seen before. And that side is what we call, for men, the complementarity of feminine thinking, of feminine ways of being, of the feminine approach to life. And it complements us. It brings out our masculinity. It brings out our desire to support, our desire to protect, our desire to preserve things, our desire to procreate also, our desire to be a provider, all of which are very masculine things, which are brought out by the feminine, uh, let's call it, way of being human. So if someone is only interested in sex and that's it, or in the looks of a woman and that's it, her physical attributes and that's it, there's a whole part of being a man which you will never access. And it's like you'd go through your entire life hobbling on one foot. You'll never become who you were meant to be as a man, because you've not learned to align yourself with that which complements you, which is femininity in its full expression. And I insist, the full expression of femininity is not just looks, it's not just sex, it's much more than that. I mean, you've had that experience where you realize, wow, women actually think in a way that's completely different from the way I think, and at the same time it's completely valid and completely true. Whoever would have thought that? It's complementarity. It's like the colors red and green. They're called complementary colors, because when you put red next to green, it makes the green more green, like pop out more. And if you put green next to red, it makes the red pop out more. I think that's the thing with femininity and masculinity. If you put masculinity next to femininity, they make each other pop out more. They express themselves more fully. But for that, it's important to protect femininity in its entirety and masculinity in its entirety also. This is what this virtue of chastity unlocks. So I know it's got a lot of negative expressions. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. The reason it sounds so negative, and I say in the Old Testament, because remember in the New Testament, Jesus Christ said, okay, don't look at a woman lustfully. But then after that, he said the greatest commandment that summarizes all the other commandments, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, is love. Love other people. Love each other as I have loved you. I give you a new commandment. Love one another as I have loved you. It unlocks so many aspects of who we are, of our being. It's like we discover who we really are by loving other people for who they really are. And I insist, it's much more than, you know, um, sex. It's much more than what they look like. It's much deeper than that. So how does one practice this virtue of chastity? This is now where the little of don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that starts to come in. First of all, I would say it starts by controlling what we look at, because it's through our eyes that a lot of the devaluing of women comes in. A lot of our minimizing them to only one aspect of their being comes in. It's so difficult nowadays to watch a TV show in which you don't have a graphic sex scene. What does that do to us? Graphic sex scenes, when you watch them in movies, and I know it's a shortcut of showing on a screen that, okay, two people love each other. That's a shortcut language, visual language. Okay, they love each other. But you see, even that shortcut has an inherent danger to it because it's equating immediately sex and love. These are not necessarily the same thing, especially when they're taken out of the context of a relationship where several acts of love, several self-sacrificing acts of love have been done and they culminate in that sexual encounter. So when that's taken out of context, it starts to perpetuate a lie, okay, that sex and love are the same thing. Once you see that over and over and over and over again on TV show after drama show after movie, that lie starts to get embedded in your head and you start to think it's okay. It's all right. I can sleep with whoever I want to sleep with. It's no problem. I mean, I love her. I love her. Why can't I sleep with her and yet I love her? So that lie starts to get embedded in our minds just by repetition. So that's why it's really important to cut off these things. Whenever you're watching a TV show and a graphic sex scene comes on, skip, hit forward, jump forward to the next scene. You don't have to stay there and watch the whole thing. You can skip forward to the next scene and you'll still fully understand and follow the story. The same thing obviously goes for the internet. 30% of traffic on the internet is pornography at the moment, according to some studies, different studies I've come across in the last few years. And that means that for the average person, if you're going to spend some time on the internet, you will come across those such graphic representations of sex or representations that reduce women to their sexuality. See this all the time on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, where it's just about, certain physical attributes of women, and it's unfortunate, it's really sad that women devalue themselves in this way. They take certain photos of themselves at certain angles and they're just saying, hey, look at me. It's almost as though they have been demeaned for such a long time in such a consistent way that they've lost sight of where their real value lies. You should ask this woman, these girls who take selfies of themselves wearing swimsuits, etc., and post them on social media. When you're 70, will you be taking these photos? Yes or no? I don't think so. Okay, cool. When you're 70, will you have lost any of your worth or will you be of less value as a human being? Yes or no? I hope no one will say, I will have lost my worth or I will be of less value as a human being. It's really important. I wish women could understand how important it is for them to try and portray themselves as holistically as they can on social media. And maybe this is just a whole aspect of re-educating women. But the point is, as a guy, when you come across these photos, skip them because they perpetuate a lie inside your head that your girlfriend or your wife or your fiance or your friends their value only lies in how they look. Don't let that lie be perpetuated in your mind. It's important to open yourself up to the truth and grab it and hold on to it. The third way is by keeping busy. You know the saying, an idle mind is a devil's workshop? It's very, very true. An idle mind is a devil's workshop. And when we keep busy, when we keep our imagination on a specific task, we sort of prevent it from running off in different directions, which could lead to us thinking certain thoughts or imagining certain things that again devalue women and reduce them only to objects of our own pleasure. And the fourth and final way is prayer, the advantage of prayer. Prayer is really important in this if you're a Christian, because we Christians believe that God is love. God is love. So love is a mysterious thing. It's difficult to grasp, difficult to get a hold of. But if you know the way really, I don't know if you've noticed that really old couples, people who've been married a very long time, start to look the same. They start to look alike. It's a weird thing. What prayer does is it gives us a lot of quality time with God. And after many, many years, you start to look like God. And God is love. You start to look like love. You start to become love fully in its fullest expression, which is God. So this is why prayer is really important for developing this virtue of chastity, for developing this virtue of fully appreciating women for who they are. And once we start to do these things, once we start to practice the virtue of chastity, what that opens us up to is being able to dive to the depths of who people really are. And that is better than reading any film, traveling to any country, watching any film. You're discovering new universes of people all around you. You're discovering new ways of looking at things. And I don't, it's one of the most fantastic experiences when you start to realize that, wow, these women all around me are really helping me to grow and to develop and to mature and to become a better human being, just because I'm starting to appreciate them over and above and beyond what they can give me physically. So this is what the virtue of chastity is all about.